America, ignored in too many churches, recruited by Islam, and welcomed by all of the jails and prisons. And it's not just police vigilante shootings and that stuff like that. We all know about the Trayvon Martins and the Breonna Taylors and the Sandra Blands and the George Floyds and the Dante Wrights and the Ahmaud Arbors. We know all about them. They are the ones that get the news coverage. But since 2015, black men have accounted for about 75% of Philadelphia's shootings. During the past 6 years, 34% of the city's shooting victims were between 18 and 24 years old, and 8% were 17 years and younger. I don't know if y'all hearing what I'm saying. There is still an order that's in effect. But thank God for the midwives. Thank God for some strong women. I wish I had some help in here with this. I said, thank God for some strong women who refused to sell their people out. They did what needed to be done. They did what we need to learn to do in our own communities right here and right now today. They refused to allow the order against their own people. They stuck together. Now we all know that the police need to be held accountable, and the courts need to be held accountable, and vigilantes and private citizens need to be held accountable. The media needs to be held accountable. But we, in our own community, black males in particular, we also need to be held. We have to learn to respect ourselves enough to respect somebody else. We have to learn to love ourselves enough to love somebody else. We have to learn that violence is unnecessary and does not solve the issues. We have to learn that walking away doesn't make you a punk. It just may keep you alive and out of jail for another day. We got to learn to manage our anger and channel the aggression into positive solutions. Got to learn that once that trigger is pulled. A young boy at the jail told me about 2 weeks ago, he said, you know what? I didn't think about it when it was going down. He said, but it took me less than a half a second to pull the trigger. And now I'm sitting in here facing 15 to life. Y'all. Took me less than a half a second to pull the trigger. But what I wasn't thinking about was how long. We got to learn that our lives have value, even if nobody else values us. We got to learn not to fight with each other, but to fight for each other. Got to learn to protect each other and not have to get protection orders from each other. Got to learn that we are our Father's children and He loves us one and all. Thank God for the midwives. Where Pharaoh messed up. Pharaoh thought that if he eliminated the males and left the females alone, that would solve his problem. I wish I could have been around to advise him at that time. You want to get rid of all the males and only have all females? Pharaoh thought his plan would eliminate a whole generation if he could just get rid of the boys. What a gross miscalculation. And this is why I say that, because you never, or in my Woodrow Day voice, never, ever, never her baby. I'm just saying. Pharaoh grossly underestimated the Hebrew midwives and their commitment to God. The Hebrew midwives knew to shout salvation as I fly. It is also an imminent reality, a powerful liberating presence among the poor right in their midst, building them up where they are torn down, propping them up on every weak and leaning side. The gospel is found wherever poor people struggle for justice, fighting for their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm just saying, in difficult times, all you have to hold on to is the God who rescued you from a famine and brought you to the land of Goshen where there was an abundance of food. the midwives refused to kill the boys. They knew that their role was to usher in the life that God had given and not to take it away. And so Pharaoh starts to notice that his plan isn't working. It's not working. And so he questions the midwives. Verse 18, Pharaoh calls the midwives in and he says, why have y'all done this? Why have y'all obeyed a direct order and allowed these boys to live? The midwives say, because our women ain't like y'all women. You know, y'all women kind of lay around. Y'all got servants and maids. Y'all don't have to lift a finger to do nothing. You don't have to cook and clean and wash and take care of the kids and hold down a job. You don't have to, y'all women don't have to do any of that. But our women, we were forced to learn how to multitask. We had to learn how to take care of the man, the children, the animals, the food, the cleaning of the house, the job. We had to multitask. We go from the time we get up in the morning and our feet hit the floor until the time our tired, weary feet hit the bed at night, only to get a little bit of rest to get up and do all that all over again. Our women ain't like y'all women. What do you mean they ain't like our women? It's funny because the text says that the Hebrew women were vigorous, and I love it. Hey, you're gonna love it even more. Listen, in Hebrew it's chaya, chaya, chaya. It's in the Hebrew. It's kind of where the ch part of it. It kind of rolls off the back of your tongue. Chaya. I mean, it's not. In other words, there is vigor of life inside these women. There's something different inside these oppressed women that y'all women don't have. They have chaya inside of them, and they tend to give birth before we even get there. In other words, these oppressed Hebrew women are healthier and stronger. They're healthier and they're stronger because they give birth before the midwife arrives. Yeah, all right. So any health professional knows that the better physical shape a pregnant woman is in, usually the easier, right? The easier the birth will be. So Pharaoh miscalculated again. Pharaoh was overworking the women with slave labor. What he didn't realize is that in the process of overworking them, he was really exercising them. He was really making them stronger and more healthy, so that's why they kept producing all of these babies so fast. You see, when you're oppressed and you have to work harder, you're going to always have to work harder anyway when you're oppressed. Nothing is ever handed to you. Nothing comes easy. You have to work hard for every little single thing you ever get. When you live under systemic oppression, you have to fight for education. You have to fight for jobs. You have to fight for opportunities. You have to fight for fair treatment. You got to fight for your family. You got to fight the judicial system. You got to fight just to survive to live another day, so that you can fight all over again. You live under systemic oppression, you don't have any other choice but to strengthen up, because you usually have somebody else depending on you. Now, not knowing about Joseph, see, this is where I think if Pharaoh was smart, he could have been the greatest pharaoh ever. Egypt could have been the most phenomenal place if he hadn't been so fearful and insecure. And see, sometimes when you're fearful and insecure, you mess up your own future. you mess up all the possibilities you could have had. There's people that might want to be around you, but they can't handle all of your fear and insecurities. They just, it's just too much. It's too messy. It's too much for me to deal with. Sometimes if you just take a minute and think that everything you think you see is not necessarily what's there. I wish I had some help in here today. Anyway, so let me say it this way. Had Pharaoh taken the time to learn about Joseph, remember, a new Pharaoh arose that did not know Joseph. Well, his people are right there in Goshen. So if you had taken the time to learn about Joseph, things for you might have worked out better. Let me tell you what I mean. So had Pharaoh taken the time to learn about Joseph, he would have learned that when the Lord is watching over you, all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to his purpose. If he had taken the time just to learn about Joseph, he would have understood that the king's heart is in the Lord's hands. If he had just taken the time to learn about Joseph, he would have understood that when God's people trust God, no Pharaoh can keep them down. Verse 20-21 reminds us that no matter what Pharaoh did, God was working behind the scenes, doing for the Hebrews what they could not do for themselves. I can't tell you how excited I get when I think about the fact that God is still working behind the scenes. John Donne said, truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. But yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadows, keeping watch above his own. God is still manipulating the chain of human events from behind the scenes. I wish I had somebody in here who understood that things may be going as well as they are for you because God is behind the scenes doing for you what you are not able to do for yourself. Hebrew people just kept on multiplying, and so Pharaoh had to issue a new order. Verse 22. The new order said, every boy that is born to the Hebrews you shall throw into the Nile River, but you shall let every girl live. First of all, Mr. Pharaoh, that pretty much sounds kind of close like the first order, which means you still ain't thinking. He didn't think that one through at all. It's like he just sat there and said, oh, I got a new thing. We're still going to kill them, just throw them in the Nile. All right, so here's the problem. This is another gross miscalculation. What Pharaoh, again, doesn't realize was that the water was controlled by God. That the water was made by God. What Pharaoh didn't realize is that by giving the order to drown the boys, a courageously committed and God-fearing woman named Jochebed would refuse to drown her baby. She would take her little boy and put him in a floating basket on that dangerous Nile River. The same one you said you want to use to kill him is the same river that God used to float the little boy into your own family. When Pharaoh changed the order, he didn't realize that a little Hebrew boy was going to end up in your family. He doesn't realize that a little Hebrew boy that you wanted dead by the name of Moses would eventually grow up and use the education that you gave him and lead his people out of slavery, out from under your hand and on to the promised land. What a gross miscalculation. Thank God for the midwives. And that's all I came here today in the snow to say, is thank God. I wish I had some help in here. I said, thank God for the midwives. And we still need some midwives in this generation. School teachers can be midwives. Parents should be midwives. Church people should be midwives. Crossing guards can be midwives. Social workers ought to be midwives. Police officers ought to be midwives. Mentors can be midwives. Men can be midwives. Pastors can be midwives. All you need to be a midwife is to have the love of Christ burning down in your heart. I said, all you need to be a midwife is to have a willing desire to see somebody desire. All you need to be a midwife is to have a willing desire to help somebody along the way. All you need to be a midwife is to have the fear of God governing your actions. Now, I need to warn you, when you're a midwife, your hands will get dirty. When you're a midwife, you got to be patient because it takes a long time. When you're a midwife, it may not always go the way you want it to go. But once you commit, you got to stay with it. Once you commit, you got to be faithful. Once you commit, you can't just give up and throw in the towel. Once you commit, you got to stay with it because some soul is depending on you and they need you. They need you to survive. You never know who's about to be born. Malcolm X, Martin King, Mary Bethune, Harriet Tubman, Shirley Chisholm, Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Thurgood Marshall, Nat Turner, Forrest Whitaker, Denzel Washington, Cicely Tyson, Gladys Knight, Will and Jada, Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, Julius Erving, LeBron James, Eric Holder, Venus Williams, Serena Williams, Barack or Michelle. You'll never know who's about to be born. Some young boy, all the boys. When Jesus, y'all don't remember. I said when Jesus was just a boy, his mama took him to hide him in Egypt. And by the way, that's how you know he was dark-skinned. I said, that's how you know he was dark-skinned. They try to make us think that Egyptians were all white folks. You can't borrow a grave. But y'all know the rest of the story. I said, you know the rest of the story? You can't keep God down because early Sunday morning, he rose from the grave. He stood up on resurrection soil and said, death, where is your sting? And grave, where is your victory? He still survived. And look at all of us. Look at all of us who can name his name. Anybody in the house want to sign up to be a midwife? Anybody here want to help somebody? If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody that he's traveling wrong, then my living, I said my living, I said my living, I said my living shall not be in vain. Am I right about it? Am I right about it?
To come down and make that commitment.